everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Welcome back. It's time for the Fantasy Football Bible Part 2. This is where I go through the rest of the games. This is the late slate, Sunday night and Monday night football. Last night's game was more points than I expected, but the game kind of went the way I thought it might go in terms of Broncos winning, in terms of not a lot of production from the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, although Courtland Sutton going completely missing was not something on the bingo card. But Javonte Williams had a really good night. Alvin Kamara did not have a very good night. But the rest of it, I feel, was kind of right in terms of how the game portrayed. Not overly shocked by it. Both quarterbacks obviously struggled quite significantly. I wouldn't have had Jake Heiner, as he's called, to be the only quarterback to throw a touchdown in this game. And he didn't appear until late in this one. So, yeah, it's a classic Thursday night football game, really, almost in so many regards. So I feel like from a fantasy perspective, the game read out the way it should have done. Just really disappointing for Courtland Sutton, who didn't even get a target, and really disappointed in Alvin Kamara. But the kind of the rest of it, I feel like, it obviously Javonte Williams had a great game, and kind of be waiting for that for quite some time. A lot of people put a lot of faith in Javonte Williams in draft season this year, and it's now about the time that he's starting to pay it back with a really good performance on Thursday Night Football. Him and really the Broncos D were really the only fantasy standouts from last night. It's not too much to digest. Saints in a really unique situation. Of course, now we have heard the news that Rashid Shaheed is out for the season. I think we kind of expected that when we first heard about the news at the start of the week. So yeah, he is done for 2024, which is a real shame. I have quite a lot of him, and I feel he was a real difference maker in some formats. So it is disappointing for him and for them that has happened. So wish Shaheed all the very best in his recovery. Right, so now we're going to go into the 3 late slate games, then the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, and then the extra Monday night plus game. I don't know what we call that one, but the really late starting game. So Rams Raiders is the first one. Rams are favored by 6.5 points, over under and 43. And the big news for this one is that Cooper Kupp is back for this one. We expect he's not officially back, but that's the direction of travel we are heading in, that Cooper Kupp will be back for Sunday night's game, or Sunday afternoon, late afternoon game. And it's going to be a welcome return. Rams coming off bye as well, so they'll be pretty fresh. The Raiders, they've changed quarterback recently to Aiden O'Connell. We then have this situation where Devontae Adams has been traded, so it's Jacoby Myers, who has got injury problems, and he is questionable whether he's going to go this week. Zamir White's questionable. Not that matters. He's not really the starter. They're struggling to run the football. It really is. The Raiders feel like they're a bit of a mess as a team, which is a shame for when you think about like Max Crosby and that defense. I actually think that defense is pretty good. 6.5 for the Rams feels about right, I guess. Maybe 5, 6. I mean, I think they win the game. I think they win it comfortably. But yeah, the only question is sort of more how much than winning the game. 43.5 feels about right too, given the struggles with this Raiders offense. So where I have these quarterbacks this week, Matt Stafford is all the way down at 22. He could go up a bit if Cooper Kupp is healthy, fully locked into a full workload. Cooper Kupp could elevate him significantly. But I think you'll start to see Matt Stafford get back up into those sort of mid-teen levels when Puka Nacua comes back. So that's why he is where he is here. Aiden O'Connell just doesn't really hold much relevance for fantasy. He's at 27 this week. Not someone I'm too desperate to play in too many formats. Kyron Williams, the man himself, who I have a lot of shares of, and I talked quite a lot in pre-season. He is the running back one for me this week. I feel pretty confident that he will get great carry load in this game. The game script suits. I have Alexander Mattison currently at running back 24. More on the fact that there are a couple of players who I think will usurp him. I think for me, he's very bottom end RB2, more top end RB3. There's a few players I'm still waiting on from a health perspective, mainly the Giants, who I talked about, Jordan Mason as well. So once I get a bit more clarity, don't be too surprised if Mattison drops a little bit down in those ranks, closer to sort of 27, 28. But at this stage, he is a startable asset at what is a pretty poor position now due to injuries and usage. So, fill your boots, but just don't expect high-end production there from Alexander Mattison. Then we're going to get into the receivers in this game. I've talked about Cooper Kupp. I currently have him as wide receiver 10. I don't think I'm going to go any higher than that. He could shift a little bit downwards, just depending on the practice schedule and how I feel. He's going to be round around that low end wide receiver 1 numbers. You'll definitely start him if he's available this week. Jacoby Myers talked about carrying a bit of injury. He's at 31 this week. Trey Tucker is at 56. Tutu Atwell 59. Demarcus Robinson 72. Jordan Whittington 78. DJ Turner down at 98. He was one of my desperation plays a week ago. He'd be one of my desperation plays again this week. I just think there's got to be something else coming out of that room. And it wouldn't shock me if DJ Turner was the guy who produced a touchdown out of absolutely nowhere. Moving on to the tight ends here. And of course, Brock Bowers is the tight end one. He's been absolutely superb this season. Definitely the best weapon that they have right now, the Raiders. So he firmly slots in there. And then Colby Parkinson is at tight end 9. Just come off rest and buy is good. But there's just, for me, slightly better tight ends. It's no besmirch on him, but definitely startable if you picked him up. And then the DSTs, the Rams are at 14. They're in that starter-worthy territory. Can't imagine they're too highly owned. And I wouldn't be worrying about the Raiders at all. And then the same with the kickers. Not overly startable. I guess if you've got shares of Carty and Carlson, then you would. But Carty's all the way down at 18. And Daniel Carlson at 29 in my kicker ranks. So definitely not ones I'd be getting too many shares of. Commanders, Panthers. Commanders favored by 8. Over under 51.5. I always struggle when I see lines like this in terms of I believe the Commanders will win the game. I totally believe the Commanders can win the game by 8. But 51.5, you're basically saying that, again, you're looking at this thinking that the Panthers are going to put up 22-ish points, which, yeah, I mean, it should happen. I think that the Washington D is a good D. It could happen. I don't think it's a line I'm attracted by. If it was 3 points lower, I probably would be. If I was a betting person, which I'm not, I probably would be a little bit more excited. The way I see this is that Washington will get out to an early lead. They'll manage this lead. They'll do a lot of it on the ground. And then the Panthers will try and chase back. We'll try and get a Andy Dalton chase display. But there is some concerns here. The big one's on Deontay Johnson. He hasn't practiced yet this week. If he doesn't practice today, he's currently really high up in my wide receiver rankings. If he doesn't practice today and I have to think about he's not going to make the game, that changes my entire outlook. I know Chuba Hubbard has been really good. I know that we're looking at Jonathan Brooks potentially being involved in this one. I still think Hubbard holds all the cards there. I still think he's going to be the lead back here. I still think he's got the dominant role. I think they'll bring Brooks on for a little bit of workload, but I don't expect him to come in and get a full workload. But I can see a way that Hubbard's role is slightly diminished and Brooks starts to increase, and it kind of goes like that way for a little bit. But for this week, I expect it to be predominantly Hubbard. And then if Deontay Johnson is out, then yeah, it's a really interesting one. Maybe Leggett gets more targets. Maybe Jonathan Mingo gets a few in replacement. It's going to be an interesting way, but unfortunately, I think if Deontay Johnson's out, I don't see a pathway to the Panthers scoring 20 odd points. I think it's going to be really, really difficult. I think they need him as that field stretcher and as that predominant workload to get them to that level. So that's why I'm a bit curious on the over under here. I think the Panthers, the Commanders will dominate. I think Jaden Daniels will have a really good game. I think that you've got, but I think a lot of this work will be done on the ground. Whether Brian Robinson Jr. is good to go, which we're not quite sure yet. I've got him in my ranks as he is, but if he is good to go, Austin Eckler is having a little bit of a mini revival here. I think that those three players, with Jaden Daniels, will really stretch this Panthers D on the ground, and then you'll get some nice balls over the top from Cliff Kingsbury, and they'll try and stretch the field a little bit more with sort of those short, intermediate, accurate passes, and try and sort of run a lot of plays in this game. So in terms of my rankings, Jane Daniels is my QB2. I have Dalton all the way down at QB19. If Deontay Johnson doesn't play, he falls outside the top 20 for me. That's as simple as that. Chuba Hubbard is currently my running back 9. That's how confident I am in him and how uncomfortable I am with the workload of Jonathan Brooks this week. But if I see Brooks is definitely back, that might make some small adjustments there. Brian Robinson is my running back 15 as it stands. Austin Eckler is at 28. Miles Sanders 54. So if Robinson doesn't go, Eckler will come up not quite as far as Robinson. He'll probably come up to round about 22, 23, I guess, in my ranks. He'll take a slight nudge up. But in terms of Brian Robinson Jr. has been phenomenal when he's been healthy. And I fully expect him to continue that. With the wide receivers in this game, I have Deontay Johnson currently as my wide receiver 6, although I am concerned that he's not going to be available, in which case this becomes a bit of a mess, almost like what we saw with the Saints last night, where you'll see guys get 5 targets, 6 targets, 40, 50 yards, and you see a lot of that. Really, you don't want any part of any of them. Leggett could be the exception to that rule, and he's the guy you would kind of stick some hope on, but I wouldn't necessarily bank on that happening. Terry McLaurin is at 20, and I feel pretty good that his volume will be there this week, and you have some opportunities to make some plays against that secondary of Carolina. Xavier Leggett is at 45. He'll get probably a very small nudge, but I don't see him breaking into beyond 40 for me, barring some injuries, because I just think it's a real difficult pathway without Deontay Johnson. So I'm a bit unsure. Noah Brown is in there at 55. He's a desperation play as well. Thought he would get a bit more work last week. But I do see more his workload upticking, and especially in terms of his separation scores and in terms of the type of plays that he makes, I definitely see a game where he will put up 100 plus yards. I don't think this will be the week because I don't think they need to risk it. But I think in future weeks where they're playing against more difficult opposition, Noah Brown is definitely one to keep an eye on. In terms of the tight ends here, Jatarian Sanders is at 13 and Zach Ertz is at 10. They're startable options at the tight end position. Just don't expect a lot of high-end volume here. As for the defenses, I have the Washington Commanders at 18. And actually, I'm sort of scratching my head at that because I'm thinking I should maybe move them up a little bit more. The way I've kind of there's a cluster here in terms of Houston against Green Bay, but I think there's turnovers on play there for the Falcons, the Ravens, and the Commanders, and I could kind of swap those options. I just think for me, the reason I think if the Commanders had a bit more of a pass rush that was a bit more reliable, I'd probably have them higher up because I could see sacks against this line, but I'm not entirely sold on it just yet. They've got a lot better, and this defense is a lot better than it was 12 months ago. I'm just not quite all the way in on it just yet. Panthers are last year, so you don't need to go through there. Nor do you need to worry about Eddie Pinheiro, but Austin Seibert is someone you should be having in your lineups. He's my kicker too this week. Moving on to the last game of the slate, 49ers and Chiefs. This should be an absolute treat. The 49ers are weirdly favourite by 1.5 points, with the over-under set at 47. I mean, the Chiefs are 5-0. I don't understand how they're not the favourites in this game. I don't get it. Like that makes no sense to me, that the 49ers have lost games that they don't normally lose. They've got no Christian McCaffrey. I'm not sure I buy this. I just think I know the Chiefs haven't been great, but they're two-time Super Bowl defending champions and they're undefeated. They have to be the favorites. Like, surely they have to be. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Take the Chiefs and the points. It feels like a gift. It really feels like a gift. And you're getting a 1.5 plus handicap on the Chiefs. That feels like an absolute gift. Said it a few times because I'm in shock by it. Over under 47, think could be in danger here. I'd smash the over. I feel pretty confident that these teams will put up at least 25 points apiece, which would take you nicely over. So expect that to happen. Although both teams do have good defenses, it's worth noting. As for and because of the way I think that for me the game script on this is, I think the Chiefs will get up early. I think they'll comfortably sort of dissect it and they'll play very steady football. It will be unexciting. It will be, long drives. Patrick Mahomes making some plays, extending those drives. They'll get down the field. They'll score points regularly, and they'll force the 49ers to chase the game. That's how I see this game panning out, which is why I have Brock Purdy at 9 this week. I think he's going to have to make some plays this week just to stay with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs will score often, but not always touchdowns. I think they'll keep the scoreboard ticking over in this game, and they'll have control of the time of possession in this game. So I think that the 49ers will have to really get down the field and take advantage of short drives in order to try and stay and keep pace with the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is all the way down at 17 for me. I just think it will be an unremarkable box score for Patrick Mahomes. There's no slight on him. It's just I think it will be an unremarkable box score, but it will all work out nicely for them. For me, in my view, this week. Kareem Hunt is my highest wide receiver in this game, running back this game. He is at 23. Jordan Mason's at 25. He is questionable. Not entirely sure if he's good to go. If not, you want to be looking at Isaac Guerrero. He is at 53. Samaje Perine is at 57. Guerrero could be a decent start if Jordan Mason is out. We're waiting for a bit more information on that. And now we get to the wide receivers. Deebo Samuel is dealing with a bit of a wrist injury, but he should go. He's at my wide receiver 8 this week. Brandon Ayuk is at wide receiver 33. I think he's got a tough matchup, and he hasn't really produced many box score worthy moments so far this season. So he's going to need to do that. In terms of the KC wide receivers, Worthy is at 41. Smith-Schuster, who's questionable, is at 42. I think both these guys will get some of the ball. I think there'll be a supporting cast of other receivers like Justin Watson, like Mecole Hardman. I think all of those are going to get some touches and some carries here. Plus, maybe Hunt out of the backfield as well, going to get some catches and targets as well. I think it will be a supporting cast that will be led in the air by Travis Kelce, who is my tight end 4 this week. But he is bettered in this game by George Kittle, who is my tight end 2. Both of these are expected to do quite well this week. I have the 49ers at 11. I think, the way that they generate turnovers, it isn't always interceptions, although there could be one on play here. Patrick Mahomes has thrown a few this year. There's no doubt there's an opportunity for them to do that or recover some form of fumble. I could see that definitely happening with the pressure that they bring. Kansas City Chiefs is at 20. I think they'll give away a lot of yards, which is why I think they will struggle in terms of points scored. And then as for the kickers, both kickers, it's Matthew Elliott for the 49ers again this week. Jake Moody is out. So he's my kicker 14 this week and definitely startable if you picked him up to replace Moody. Harrison Butker is at 6 this week. We move to Sunday Night Football, and it's going to be interesting, I think is the way I'm going to call it. Steelers versus the Jets. Jets are favored again. Jets favored by 1.5. Not sure I'm buying that. I'll take the Steelers and the points all day long. Over under set at 38. I'm not sure you can call there's probably 3 teams in the league I would say the Jets are stern favorites against. And I'm not having the Steelers be one of them. They have won a lot of games this year by just getting them done. Yes, they've made a quarterback change. And I feel like this betting line has been done through 2 changes in the way that the media has perceived these changes. in the sense of, one, Devontae Adams coming to the Jets, and they're all of a sudden like, oh, well, they're a much better team now they've got Devontae Adams. It's going to take time. He's going to take time to get used to the playbook. Yes, it won't take as long, as I said, as Amari Cooper yesterday. But it's still going to take time. I'm not sure I'm buying that he brings them an instant victory here. I'm happy to be proved wrong, but at this point, I can't project that or expect it. The same way that the news on Russell Wilson starting has been met with absolute anger, visceral nature. I don't get it, but it is the way we are. I'm not sure that those two things result in a point swing towards the Jets, but that's what Vegas say. Over under 38 feels low. Feel like you could target that. Obviously, two really good defenses, and that's probably why. But yeah, I mean, 40, I would have gone, yeah, okay, fine. 38 feels a bit low. But Jets as favorites. Give me the Steelers and the points. That feels like a gimme. Let's talk about the quarterbacks here. And I have Aaron Rodgers at 21 this week, and I have Russell Wilson at 29. So not really startable in single quarterback format. You can do as you will in Superflex, but it will be an interesting one. I don't expect them to be particularly high. Breece Hall is at 11. I hope he gets some life in him soon. Najee Harris is at 20. I think Jaylen Warren will take a little bit of that workload, which is why I have Jaylen Warren at 34 this week. Braden Allen is at 52. Moving on to the wide receivers in this game, and this is where the interesting part comes in, because everyone's going to know where Devontae Adams is. He's at 26 for me. Garrett Wilson at 27. I do think that Adams will get targets. I do think he will get open. I think he will make space, but we're expecting too much if you think he's going to be a wide receiver one immediately straight out of the gate here. He's going to practice with them maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times as a max. So I'm not so sure about that one. So Devontae Adams at 26, Garrett Wilson at 27, George Pickens at 29. Maybe the change of quarterback might unlock him a little bit more, but I'm going to wait a week before I move him up. Alan Lazard is at 63. I just think he's the one that probably loses out the most to what is going on with Devontae Adams. And then we look at the tight ends here. Pat Freiermuth at 20. Tyler Conklin, who is got a questionable tag, is at 23. The defenses here will be absolutely pivotal. I have the Steelers at DST3. I have the Jets at DST5. So both of them will definitely be in play for this one. And then if you look at the kickers in this one, Boswell is at 8. He's actually the kicker 2 on the season, which is really interesting. A lot of that came from the first couple of weeks. Greg DeLeg, who missed a few, he's at 27 this week. I'm not trusting him as much. We move to official Monday Night Football, and it is Buccaneers, Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is set at 49.5. I think the over is well in play to be smashed here. I expect it to be over 49.5 points for the way these two offenses have been in recent weeks. I absolutely expect this over to get decimated and expect closer to 60 points than I do 50 points. Ravens by 3.5. That feels like a good line. I would expect the Ravens to come into Tampa and take care of business. I would say the Tampa defense banged up a little bit. Will give up points over the middle. I expect Isaiah likely to perhaps be a little bit more involved than he has been in recent weeks, and you might find the same as well for Mark Andrews. I'm a little bit more cautious on that. I think both defensive lines here are in play to definitely rattle both quarterbacks here. And I think where this game is going to be won or lost is potentially on 2 areas. One, the run game, and then the second one is who wins the turnover battle. And I think whoever wins the turnover battle in this game will probably end up winning the game. The run game is really interesting. Tampa, one of the best run defenses in the NFL over the last 5 seasons, and still continue to stifle running backs most of the time anyway. Coming with Derrick Henry, who is easily the rushing leader. He's nearly 100 yards ahead of Jordan Mason, nearly 200 yards ahead of anybody else. I do think they can contain him, but I don't think they can contain him the whole game. And I think the more that they pound through Derrick Henry, he will get some joy eventually. Just might not see in the first half, but I expect there to be some success there in that second half with tired legs playing a big factor. And the Ravens will always commit to the run. Why they invested so heavily in Derrick Henry. As for the Buccaneers, they're going to run with a three-headed committee. It's going to be Rashad White, it's going to be Sean Tucker, and it's going to be Bucky Irving. Coach Todd Bowles has said he's going to run the hot hand, and he's a pretty reliable person when he comes and they pretty much say what he says what they're going to do. He is pretty open, and I do expect him to run the hot hand. I think White will get the first go, then I think it will be Irving, and I think if both are struggling, then Sean Tucker will come in. I probably wouldn't play Tucker this week. Now, famous last words, he could come in, he could get a chance, he could storm it. He was fantastic last week in New Orleans, but I think they're going to go with tried and tested, and that's my gut feeling. Is you'll see White, you'll see Irving, and I guess it's who's going to make the most out of that tandem. So I expect the over to be smashed here. That feels like a really cheap line to make the most out of. Ravens by 3.5 makes sense. I can't really hate that too much, really, given the history of these teams and where, even though they're both really in form and both in good places, the Buccaneers just seem to make a bit more tedious mistakes than perhaps the Ravens do, and it could come to those fine margins. I have Lamar Jackson as my QB1. There's absolutely no doubt that he will be able to make plays against this Buccaneers defense, but I also have Baker Mayfield at 5. I fully expect him, the passing touchdown leader in the NFL, to put up as good as he gets as well in this one. Derrick Henry is at 6 for this one. Again, feel like there'll be some success, but I don't encapsulate him having the best week of all the running backs. As for the Buccaneers, I have Rashad White at 26, who's carrying a questionable tag. Bucky Irving at 29. And Tucker is a lot lower down. Tucker's at 60. I think he is the outside looking in. If there is a problem with White, who's still carrying a tag and he is questionable to go, then potentially we could look at this and say it's a two-headed monster like last week, and then I'd be more inclined to change my ranks. But for me, I think Tucker's on the outside looking in, despite being the NFC's offensive player of the week. Let's move to the wide receivers. Chris Godwin is my wide receiver 2. I think he's going to be used very often in this one. Zay Flowers is a really good matchup in this one. He's at 13. Mike Evans, who is carrying a questionable tag, is at 19 for me. Rashad Bateman is at 50. Wouldn't be too shocked to see him get in the end zone in this one in Tampa. And then we look at the tight ends here. And as I said, I do think there's a pathway to Isaiah Likely being a factor this week. He's at 14. Don't be too surprised if I finish him slightly higher in my rankings. Mark Andrews at 16 as well. Both of those are in play. They are split by Cade Otton, who is at 15. All of them are worthy touchdown bets this week for a desperation play. The defenses are going to be a bit tricky. I've got the Ravens at 17. As I said, I might move them down. The Buccaneers at 22. But I think both kickers are in play here. Chase McLaughlin is at 7. He is used to kicking in these conditions. I have Justin Tucker at 10. I will revise that ranking based on the weather format. Anything with a bit of extra wind kicking outside. The fact that Tucker hasn't been his absolute best this season means I'm probably more skeptical on him, but he is still at 10. You're still starting him because of where you drafted him. And then Sunday Night Football, or Monday Night Football Plus, or this bonus game, or whatever we're calling it. Cardinals, Chargers. Chargers favored by 2.5, over under 43. This is a really hard game to read. The Chargers are coming out of this bye week that they've had. They have had time now to really adopt what they want to do with Harbaugh and all these pieces. The Cardinals are a gritty team. They kind of stay in all games, except for last week where they got blown out and didn't look good, and that was on the back of a really good win against the 49ers. They're kind of going to be this up and down team who will just try and sort of work it out together. But they're kind of a bit of a mishmash of players. There isn't that style that you would have expected from a second-year head coach yet. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think the Chargers will win this game. I just think they look a bit more of a cohesive unit. I think they've got a great makings of a great defense, and also they've got the ability to run this football consistently, and they don't abandon the run. And I think that could be the real difference in this game, is those longer, more sustained drives. We'll go to the quarterbacks in this one. I think Kyler Murray's going to beat his match this week. He's at 14. He will get some rushing yards, but I think he will be wrapped up pretty well here in this one. Justin Herbert is at 24. No need to start him unless you're in a super flex. In terms of the running backs here, I have J.K. Dobbins at 12. I have James Conner at 31. I have Kimani Vidal, who I think is going to get an increased role this week, at 36. In terms of the wide receivers, I have Marvin Harrison Jr., who's carrying a questionable tag at 25. Michael Wilson Jr., who's also carrying a questionable tag at 32. Quentin Johnston, I actually think he has a really good matchup this week, but he also has a questionable tag. He's at 34. And then Lad McConkey, who also has a questionable tag at 43. A lot of injured potential receivers in this one. We're going to find out a bit more in the next 24 hours or so. So that complex at the wide receiver position could really change in this game and actually change the nature of the game, given it's quite closely projected. So do keep an eye on that one. Chargers don't need to worry about the tight ends here, but you do care about Trey McBride. He's tight end 3 this week. He seems to be the perennial tight end 3 for me. And then I'm all for the Chargers as the DST. They're my DST 9. I'm not in on the Cardinals. They're DST 28. And then Matt Prater is still out. I believe he has gone on to IR. So Chad Ryland comes in. He is my kicker 30 of this week. So not someone that anyone should be starting. But Cameron Dicker is my kicker 9 for this week. And that's going to do it. That's going to do it for the week. Enjoy week 7 and good luck as we try and build on some wins, put some more ships in the harbor and get a bit closer to the playoffs. So until then, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.